ना माँ ना बाप ना भाई।
This is Punjab, India's breadbasket, where 84% of the land is given to agriculture, and high-yielding varieties of wheat and rice have brought prosperity to the farmer. Punjab also boasts the highest per capita income in the country. But Lehal Kala village in Sangrur district tells a different story. Charanjeet Kaur lost her brother-in-law Bhura Singh last year. He swallowed pesticide, she said. He was only 25. The family owned 5 acres of land on which they grew wheat and paddy. But over the years, the price of fertilizer and seeds had increased tenfold. Of late, the yields had also dwindled. With the cost of living going up, they began to borrow, in the hope that the next season would be better. But with each passing year, the harvest grew smaller. Now, most of their land has been sold, and only 1 acre remains contracted out for cultivation. So Charanjeet is left with the formidable task of feeding her family and paying off Bhura Singh's 1.5 lakh rupee debt on an annual income of about 12,000 rupees. Her husband now works for wages as a night watchman at the government warehouse. With literacy levels low in this district, there are few options beyond farming.
इन्हां तो हेठ धरती उपर रब है, कोई नहीं हैगा इन्हां दा।
A pall of desperation hangs over Charanjeet's village. Almost all the farmers are in debt. A generation earlier, their fathers had abandoned traditional ways for the new hybrid seeds that promised bumper harvests. These seeds required large amounts of commercial fertilizer and pesticide. So, over the years, the yields began to drop, but the chemicals kept increasing, leaving the farmers deep in debt with degraded land and depleted water sources. A little further, in Buttal Khurd village, the story is tragically similar. Binder Singh committed suicide in December. He was 23. His mother and surviving brother have put up their 6 acres of land for sale to pay the 7 lakh rupee debt he incurred on chemical inputs. Inputs which he had hoped would give him a better yield.
We are seeing what we are seeing in India, the emergence of farm suicides. 20,000 farmers have committed suicide because seed monopolies have been linked to selling more chemicals, which have forced farmers to go into a farming which requires 100,000 rupees per acre as input costs, and they earn 10,000 rupees at the end. An economy of that quality pushes farmers into 1 lakh debt per acre every year. No small peasant with earning of 10,000 can pay that back. Within 2 years, they know it's hopeless. They consume the same pesticide in Warangal, in Bathinda, in Punjab. These are epidemics. And to me, this inhumanity of human beings is unacceptable.
In Rajasthan, the unrelenting drought of the past 5 years has driven the men to the cities in search of jobs, leaving children to starve. while elsewhere, bumper harvests have filled the country's granaries to overflowing, and food lies spoiling on the floors. This is the outcome of current agricultural policies that have disastrously impacted the farmer.
The problem of overflowing godowns with 65 million tons of grain rotting, where they talked about dumping 2 million in the sea, and thousands facing starvation in Kashipur in Orissa, in Rajasthan, in Maharashtra, where 8,000 tribal children were reported dead because of starvation last year. And studies showed that from 91 to 2000, the rate of death due to starvation of infants had increased from 0% to 46%. This phenomena is very clearly a result of policy.
Dr. Vandana Shiva, physicist by discipline, ecologist, researcher, author, activist by choice, has made it her life's mission to alert us to the deplorable state of agriculture in India today. India is an agricultural country where the vast majority lives in villages. Yet somehow agriculture and the rural poor have become the subjects of political sloganeering rather than the foundation for a sound development policy. Dr. Shiva has been championing the farmers' cause, taking on the world's corporate agribusiness giants, speaking out against their dangerous technologies that she maintains have devastated traditional farming communities, not only in India, but the whole of the developing world. She is deeply concerned by a growing trend among small and marginal farmers to adopt large-scale commercial cultivation of crops like hybrid cotton, sinking huge investments in their holdings in the hope of turning a good profit. Mixed crops like pulses, bajra, jawar and oilseeds are being abandoned for the apparently more lucrative paddy-wheat combination. But such intensive cropping of high-yielding varieties robs the soil of essential nutrients, while the tendency to monoculture seriously threatens the region's biodiversity. In the 1960s, Punjab was the heart of India's Green Revolution, with its promise of plenty and an end to starvation. But while new seed varieties and production technologies did put food in the mouth of millions, it took its toll on the soil. Even scientists at the Indian Council for Agricultural Research admit as much.
In 50s and 60s, our food grain production was much less, about 50 to 60 million tons. And now with the evolution of new varieties and new production technology, the food grain production has gone to more than 200 million tons. This is in fact creating a lot of problems in the exhausting of the micronutrient in the soil by continuous cropping of the high yielding varieties, particularly the rice and wheat. And you must be knowing that the rice and wheat cropping system has been very intensively used in Punjab, Haryana and in many states.
The Green Revolution's absorption with staple grains and their yields displaced to a large extent a diverse range of other traditional food crops. Such large-scale monocultures and indiscriminate cropping could pose a very real danger to our priceless genetic heritage. India has always been blessed with infinite variety in its plant and animal life that Indian farmers have always respected, protecting the land's natural wealth through traditional agricultural practices. Concerned that moving away from traditional agricultural practices would lead to environmental disaster and disrupt the well-established norms of food security, Dr. Vandana Shiva launched a national program for the conservation of agricultural diversity and the promotion of sustainable cultivation. She named it Navdanya, literally 9 seeds, to represent a diverse ecological balance. Navdanya's aim is to raise public consciousness regarding India's rich natural heritage and the hazards of genetic manipulation, while also preventing piracy of the farmers' wealth of indigenous knowledge.
Well, Navdanya is first and foremost a movement to save biodiversity, the richness of life, the richness of our agricultural crops, the partnership that different species have to maintain ecological balance. And I started this in 1987 when I realized how this tremendous life on this planet was going to be the new raw material, it was going to be the new green oil of the future. And there were patents being taken on seeds and plants and our traditional knowledge. There was new genetically engineered organisms being released without any assessment of ecological and health impacts. And that's when I realized that something had to be done to save our diversity.
At the model farm, started 5 years ago, close to her hometown Dehradun, she has transformed an area made desert by eucalyptus plantations into thriving farmland where over 650 varieties of plants now flourish, including, among others, 250 rice varieties, 30 wheat varieties, and many species of medicinal plants, proving that environmentally sound practices can also be self-sustaining.
The first season we had some fungal diseases and we had a few pests. After the second season, organic manuring has prevented pest occurrence, and there's scientific studies like those by Chabuso, hundreds now in the world, that show that organically fed plants are resistant to pests and disease. Chemically fed plants are prone to pests and diseases. So you reduce pest occurrence by the way you do farming, but if at all you do have pest occurrence, if you grow mixtures as we do, we are growing, always mustard along with wheat, we'll grow sesame along with rice, we will always mix. And when you mix crops, something that feeds on one plant will be a predator to something that feeds on another plant, and you never have any insect pest growing in too big a proportion.
At the Navdanya Seed Bank, thousands of seed varieties from indigenous strains are collected and stored for distribution and exchange among farmers. Dr. Shiva believes that it is only these indigenous seeds developed by farmers through generations of first-hand experience that can support agriculture for decades to come, because these hardy varieties have been specifically bred to endure the local environmental conditions.
इस बार जब धान के टाइम पे बारिश नहीं हुई तो इस बार बहुत नुकसान हुआ। हमारी कम से कम 12-13 बोरियां हो जाती थी, इस बार हमारी मुश्किल से 3 बोरियां भी नहीं हुई हैं। वो इसलिए कि मतलब कि बारिश नहीं हुई, और नवधान्य के बाद ऐसे बीज हैं जिसमें कि ज़्यादा पानी नहीं लगता है। उन्होंने हमें ये बताया कि अगर तुम्हें बीज बाई द वे अगर बारिश नहीं होती है उस टाइम पे अगर तुम्हें पैडी लगाना है तो हमसे संपर्क करें, हमसे बीज लेकर जाएँ। और फिर यही कहते हुए यही मतलब इन सब चीज़ों को देखते हुए हम लोगों को लगा कि हाँ, हमें इन सब चीज़ों ऐसे बीज भी रखने अपने पास जो कम से कम पानी में अच्छे से अच्छे वो प्रोडक्शन दे।
Hybrid seeds, on the other hand, are non-sustainable. They are vulnerable to a variety of diseases and pest attacks. Moreover, they need to be replaced after 1 or 2 crops, binding the farmer as they do to the profit-driven seed corporations. Human rights activist Inderjeet Singh Jaiji, who has been working with farmers in Punjab, knows only too well the high price farmers must pay for these hybrid seeds.
Because they give you one-time seed. You get a bumper crop. Next time, again, you will have to go to them because follow-up will not be good. So I don't think that's going to suit the Indian farmer.
However, ICAR scientists entrusted with developing agricultural technologies and finding solutions to productivity problems tend to disagree. They maintain that hybrid seeds generated through controlled pollination provide much higher yields on smaller areas.
As a result, in totality, our farmers are getting more profits, the cultivation of hybrid varieties, and the government is all set to promote further this technology, and we have a large number of research projects, research programs to generate newer technologies and newer hybrids having the resistance to a number of biotic and abiotic stresses, so that it may be further more economical to our farmers.
This view is shared by the private sector, particularly the multinational corporations whose very technologies are challenged by Dr. Shiva. They argue that these improved seeds are vital for the survival of India's growing population, as they are capable of producing bigger harvests on smaller areas, making them more profitable for the farmer.
If we see the history of Indian agriculture, if we compare it to 60s and current, in the 60s we were just producing 80 million tons of production to feed 500 million, basically 50 crore of population. Today we are producing 210 million tons of production to feed 1 billion population. If our productivity had not increased through providing better seeds, we would have required 4 lakh square kilometer more area, equivalent to size of Madhya Pradesh, to produce the required quantity of food.
But with their long-term effects of widespread soil degradation, loss of biodiversity and destruction of livelihoods, do they truly live up to these claims? The problem isn't only with growing too much of a single crop. There are many other critical issues involved. Today, in many parts of the country, the Green Revolution's momentum has slowed, almost to a standstill, as development in this sphere has been stagnant for the past decade. According to economist Dr. Abhijit Sen of the Jawaharlal Nehru University, with the withdrawal of government from this sector, agriculture, especially for the small farmer, has become an unprofitable business.
And I think it is increasingly becoming the case that smaller farmers are facing real problems in those areas where the government had originally created certain institutions, for example procurement, for example rural credit, for example subsidies of various kinds, some of which are desirable, some of which are not. But as the government has withdrawn, I think a large part of the burden has actually fallen on the smaller farmers.
Sukhchen, a suicide widow, has been left with a few acres of land, so degraded from overuse that its yield is next to nothing, and a debt so large that after 5 years, the family is still struggling to pay it off. Sangrur and Bhatinda districts have the highest suicide rates in Punjab. They began in 1990 and increased steadily to reach alarming proportions today. Here in Sangrur, farmer suicides account for half the suicides in the district. Even if these suicides are so far confined to only a few districts, isn't their very occurrence in a prosperous state like Punjab perhaps symptomatic of a deeper crisis gripping the whole of the agricultural community?
जिमीदार का कोई भी ट्रैक्टर हो, कंबाइन हो, मोटरसाइकिल हो, सारा कर्जे पर है.
Farmers are spending more than they're earning, as a result of which they are not really retaining food for themselves. The day they grow their wheat and rice, they rush to the market to sell it to pay back the creditor and the money lender who's breathing down their throat. And then they have to borrow from that same money lender at huge interest to be able to feed themselves. It is a system of bondage. It is what we have called bioserfdom.
With no official support and very little standing with the banks, about the only line of credit left open to the farmer is the local money lender, the Arthya.
The government has not guided him properly. There should have been extension officers going around and advising them where to purchase their seed, where to purchase that. The government has been negligent in that to the advantage of the Arthyas. The reason was Arthyas finance the politicians during elections. They finance them even after elections. So there's a sort of a mix-up between the politicians and the arthiyas.
Brothers Sukhcharan and Sukhjinder had even invested in a tractor. But their credit ran out. The tractor was repossessed by the Arthia, and they joined the growing list of suicide victims in Lehel Kala.
हारती है चीज सड्डे करे कि कोई भी बानिया पैसा है तो मिलने चाहिए अगला कुछ बेच के बरो देखा
दबाव ऐसे होता है हम आरती से पैसा ले लेना है जाके पहले ले लेना फसल अभी खर्चे के लिए फसल का पैसा ले लेना ही वो पैसा फिर हमको उसको जाना ही पड़ेगा या उससे पैसा ले लिया फसल के लिए उसके बाद जाना ही पड़ेगा हम.
The Arthia most often is also the local trader who provides free advice on inputs, hands out supplies on credit, and then holds the farmer to ransom when he can't pay back his loan. Many of these money lenders are also the distributors for big corporations that manufacture agricultural products. Corporations like Monsanto, who have long had a presence in India, promoting sunflower and maize hybrids, and more recently, BT cotton, along with a range of chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Their new technologies, improved cropping methods, and high-yielding seeds have, they argue, improved the farmers' prospects.
If you see Indian farmer, they are very small farmers, and in the past, yes, they were growing crops for self-sustenance, for food production, for their fiber, so they were totally dependent on various different type of crops. Current day, if farmers through the growing cash crops, if they are able to reap better harvests and get better benefits, the monetary benefits they get, they can always use to buy their food.
No one will be
Technologies with high input demands for fertilizer and pesticide are upsetting the delicate balance between humanity and nature, making local communities dependent on a market mechanism that is unfairly weighted against them.
And that has to do with the fact that many new corporations that are giant size, that are big, are trying to carve commerce out of domains that never belong to commerce. For example, seeds, biodiversity. This is about life, and for corporations to reduce life in its tremendous variety to a commodity, to private property through intellectual property is a new step humanity is taking, breaking away from every other stage in which we have experienced our humanity.
With the signing of the GATT and WTO agreements, Indian agriculture has been thrown into the free market system, a whole new order with which our farmers are ill-equipped to cope. Worse, farmers' opinions are never taken into consideration when the government is carving out policies.
हमको मुकाबला के बोलते हैं कि करो तुम अमेरिका के कनाडा के साथ, तुम्हारी क्वालिटी बढ़िया होनी चाहिए. जो सहूलत है बिल्कुल नहीं, उनको 200% सब्सिडी मिलती है. सरकार की नीति बहुत किसान के हक में नहीं है, बरखिलाफ है.
Dr. Shiva blames the World Bank and IMF for pressurizing the Indian government into reducing its role in the procurement and distribution of food. This, she says, is an open invitation to agribusiness corporations to flood our markets with cheap, subsidized imports of food products. In a country where farming not only provides food for the people, but is also a means of livelihood for millions, this is a serious problem.
The global corporations are now controlling something like 70% of the world's trade, but offering 2% of the world's employment. Now, if they were to control even more of the world trade through rules of globalization and trade liberalization, their employment offering will grow up to 3%. What happens to the 97% of humanity?
While India certainly needs the new technologies to make agriculture more sustainable and economical, Dr. Abhijit Sen questions their viability.
I think I would share with Vandana Shiva the basic scare that if you start off with a philosophy that all the solutions are going to come from established multinationals, you are on a sure road to disaster.
Dr. Shiva's answer to the big corporations is sustainable livelihoods through natural organic farming, which she believes is the only feasible option for this country. In short, by reverting to nature, organic farming adheres to the cropping cycles devised by nature, avoiding the use of synthetic or chemical inputs, whether to promote growth or prevent disease. This not only maintains the productivity of the soil, but also produces food products that are nutritious, palatable and safe from harmful chemicals.
ये बैल हमारे लिए बहुत अहम चीज़ है. अगर ये ना हो तो हमारी खेती नहीं हो सकती इन बैलों के बगैर. और इन बैलों का जो मूत्र जो होता है ये हम इसको यहाँ इकट्ठा करते हैं. इसको इसलिए इकट्ठा करते हैं हम क्योंकि जैसे हमारे मतलब फसल में या कोई भी पौधा है उसमें कोई कीड़ा लग जाए, जैसे यही पौधा है इसमें कोई कीड़ा लग जाएगा तो हम इसके ऊपर छिड़काव करेंगे, क्योंकि इसका छिड़काव इसलिए फ़ायदेमंद है कि वो कीड़ा जो है इसके छिड़काव से मर जाएगा. मतलब उसकी सुरक्षा के लिए हम इसको इकट्ठा करते हैं. और उनका जो गोबर होता है उसको हम ऐसे जो ये ढेर लगा हुआ है इसको इकट्ठा करके ये जब 5-6 महीने में सड़ जाता है मतलब, तो इसको फिर हम अपने खेती में डाल के इससे जो है हमारी उपज और भी अच्छी होती है.
Her Navdanya model is being successfully replicated across the Doon Valley.
हम लोगों ने आज तक सभी से ये कहा कि हम खेती करिए, ऑर्गेनिक खेती करिए, जैविक खेती करिए, लेकिन अब क्योंकि यहाँ काफ़ी हमारे गांव में जैविक.
जब हमने नवधान्य अटेंड किया तो उन लोगों ने बताया कि फर्टिलाइज़र और केमिकल चीज़ों से हमें नुकसान है. तो इस बात को हम भी नोट करते थे पर शायद इतने डीपली नोट नहीं किया करते थे. और उन्हीं के अकॉर्डिंग अब हम खेती किया करते हैं और उससे जो हम फर्टिलाइज़र वगैरह यूज़ किया मतलब ख़रीदा करते थे वो पैसा अब हमारे पास बचता है. नंबर 1 एक फ़ायदा तो ये हुआ. दूसरा फ़ायदा जो टेस्ट लेस हो गया था हमारा अनाज, अब उसमें टेस्ट आता है. और पहले जो बीमारियां लगा करती थी मतलब क्रॉप्स पे भी और इंसानों के अंदर भी जो खाकर जाती हैं, अब ना तो क्रॉप्स पे बीमारियां हैं इतनी और ना हम लोगों के अंदर. अब हमें मतलब काफ़ी अब हम आराम से पता लगा सकते हैं कि हम पहले कितने गलत थे और अब हम कितने सही होते जा रहे हैं.
And it is through such practical examples that Vandana Shiva has succeeded in alerting policymakers, not only in India, but the world over, to the vital need to address ecological issues even as they cope with the onslaught of globalization. She has fought hard to protect the Earth's biodiversity, the variety of its plant and animal life, for the people's right to livelihood and common ownership of the land's resources. For developing countries like India, Vandana Shiva's crusade cannot be ignored.